Imagine it is 1994. You're sitting in London and you want to spend the weekend in Barcelona. Today, you would pull out your phone, tap a few buttons, and book a flight for the price of a decent dinner. But in 1994, that same flight would cost you a small fortune. Flying was an event. It was a luxury reserved for the wealthy, the business executives, and the elite. The European airline industry was a cartel. National flag carriers like British Airways, Air France, and Lufthansa controlled the skies. They fixed the prices, they owned the prime airport slots, and they had absolutely no reason to make travel affordable for the average person. They were dinosaurs, bloated with massive overheads, free meals, and zero competition. Then came the asteroid, a 20-something Greek Cypriot kid. Massive inheritance, obsession with efficiency, zero respect for convention. Sir Stelios Haji-Ioannou. You know him for the airline. But his premise was simple. Strip the nonsense. Give people what they want. Paint it violently orange. This is the story of Stelios. The empire he was born into. To understand the rebel, you have to understand the empire he was born into. Stelios wasn't born an underdog. He was born on February 14th, 1967, in Athens, Greece, the second son of Stelios Haji-Ioannou. Stelios wasn't just a businessman. He was a titan, a self-made billionaire shipping magnate. Stelios owned the largest independent fleet of oil tankers in the entire world. The family possessed unimaginable wealth. They moved between Athens, Monaco, and London. Picture this. While other kids were worrying about school lunches, Stelios was being raised in a world of yachts, private jets, and boardroom conversations about global oil markets. The Haji-Ioannou name carried weight across the Mediterranean. This wasn't inherited nobility. This was earned power, built tanker by tanker, deal by deal. But growing up in the shadow of a self-made titan comes with crushing expectations. Stelios was educated at the prestigious London School of Economics, graduating in 1987, and went on to earn a master's degree from the City University Business School. He was being groomed. The path was laid out. Finish school, join the family business, and manage the fleet. And for a while, he played the part. He worked for his father's company, Trudeau's Shipping. But Stelios was restless. The shipping industry was deeply traditional, incredibly slow-moving, and, frankly, his father was a micromanager who cast a very long shadow. Stelios didn't want to just manage his father's legacy. He wanted to build his own. He wanted to be the architect, not just the caretaker. The tension was building. Here was a young man with world-class business education, sitting in an office managing his father's empire, watching as decisions were made for him, watching as his ideas were dismissed or overruled. He wasn't learning entrepreneurship. He was learning obedience. And Stelios wasn't built for obedience. Stelmer Shipping, proving himself. In 1992, at the age of 25, Stelios made his first major move. He went to his father and asked for a payout. Stelios, recognizing his son's ambition, handed him £30 million. It's a staggering amount of seed money, and critics are always quick to point this out. But what Stelios did with that money proved he wasn't just a spoiled heir. He founded Stelmer Shipping. But instead of copying his father, he innovated. He refused to deal with the volatile spot market of oil transport. Instead, he focused on long-term, fixed-rate contracts with major corporations. It was less glamorous, but it was predictable, stable, and highly profitable. Think about the psychology here. Stelios could have simply replicated his father's model. It worked, it made billions. But that would have made him a copy, not an original. By deliberately choosing a different strategy, he was making a statement. I can succeed on my own terms, using my own methods. By the time Stelmer went public on the New York Stock Exchange in 2001 and was later sold in 2005 for $1.3 billion, Stelios had proved his point. He wasn't just Lucas's son. He was a formidable businessman in his own right. But long before Stelmer was sold, Stelios had already found his true obsession: the Southwest Airlines inspiration. While running his shipping company, a friend introduced Stelios to a business case study that would change his life. It was about an American company called Southwest Airlines, run by a fiercely eccentric man named Herb Kelleher. Southwest had revolutionized American domestic travel. Their model was absurdly simple. Point-to-point flights, no hubs, no free meals, massive utilization of the aircraft, and keeping prices so low that flying was cheaper than taking a Greyhound bus. Stelios was fascinated. Here was an industry, airlines, that everyone assumed had to be expensive, premium, and full of services. And Herb Kelleher had proven that was complete nonsense. You could strip away everything except the essential service, getting people from point A to point B, and people would love you for it. Stelios looked at Europe and realized nobody was doing this. The European market was ripe for disruption. The European Union had recently deregulated the skies, meaning any EU airline could fly between any EU member states without government interference. The legal barrier was gone, but the traditional airlines were still operating like monopolies. This was the opportunity. The door had been unlocked, but nobody had walked through it yet. The flag carriers were too comfortable, too bloated, too convinced of their own invincibility to adapt. They thought deregulation meant they could expand their routes. Stelios saw it meant he could destroy their entire business model. The birth of easyJet. In 1995, at just 28 years old, Stelios launched easyJet. The initial setup was incredibly humble. He leased two Boeing 737-200 aircraft. He didn't base them at Heathrow or Gatwick. The landing fees were too high. Instead, he set up shop at London Luton Airport, a regional airport that most Londoners considered to be practically in the wilderness. His headquarters was a tin-roofed shed, literally painted orange. He called it Easyland. The entire company culture was built around cost-cutting. There were no travel agents involved. They took too much commission. You had to call easyJet directly to book. The phone number was painted in massive, unmissable letters across the side of the airplanes. It was brilliant, free advertising. Every single decision was filtered through one question. Does this help us fly cheaper? If the answer was no, it was cut. Ruthlessly. No exceptions. The early days were chaotic but revolutionary. Stelios ruthlessly stripped away the frills. Want a meal? Bring a sandwich or buy one on board. Want to check a bag? You pay extra. Want a pre-assigned seat? No chance. It was open seating, a mad dash for the best spot, which ensured passengers boarded quickly, allowing the plane to turn around and get back in the air faster. Planes only make money when they are flying, and Stelios kept his planes in the air longer than anyone else in Europe. The turnaround times were revolutionary. Traditional airlines took 45 minutes to an hour to turn a plane around. Stelios got it down to 25 minutes. That meant his two planes could make more flights per day than competitors' four planes. It was efficiency weaponized. The first route was London Luton to Glasgow, Scotland. The price? £29. It was practically giving the seats away. The established airlines laughed. They called it a gimmick. They said passengers wouldn't tolerate the lack of service. They said easyJet would be bankrupt in a year. They were wrong. The public didn't care about free stale peanuts. They cared about the price. The demand was explosive. The orange planes were flying completely full. Within months, Stelios added more routes. Every single one sold out. He wasn't stealing passengers from British Airways premium travelers. He was creating an entirely new market. People who had never flown before were suddenly booking weekend trips. Students, families, regular working people were discovering they could afford to fly. The war with British Airways. But when you threaten a monopoly, the monopoly fights back. British Airways, the grand old flag carrier of the UK, watched easyJet's rapid expansion with growing panic. They realized the low-cost model wasn't a fad. It was an existential threat. So, British Airways decided to crush Stelios. In 1998, British Airways launched its own low-cost airline called GoFly. It was heavily funded, backed by the immense resources of BA, and designed specifically to bleed easyJet dry and put them out of business. It was a classic corporate strong-arm tactic. Most young CEOs would panic. They would retreat, lawyer up, or try to quietly survive. Stelios went to war, and he used the greatest weapon in his arsenal, guerrilla marketing and absolute audacity. On the day of GoFly's very first inaugural flight, Stelios and his senior management team booked tickets on the plane. They showed up at the terminal wearing full-body, bright orange easyJet boiler suits. They handed out free letters to the passengers, explaining that GoFly was burning taxpayer and shareholder money just to stop competition and thanking them for supporting the low-cost revolution easyJet started. It was a PR masterclass. He humiliated British Airways on their own turf. The media ate it up. Stelios positioned himself as the working-class hero fighting the evil, price-gouging corporate giant. Every time British Airways attacked him, he used it as free marketing. The strategy worked flawlessly. While GoFly struggled to figure out its identity, caught between being a premium brand and a budget carrier, easyJet stayed ruthlessly focused. By 2000, easyJet was floated on the London Stock Exchange. The tin shed in Luton had become a multi-billion-pound enterprise. And the ultimate irony? In 2002, easyJet actually bought out GoFly, absorbing the very weapon British Airways had built to destroy them. Stelios hadn't just survived. He had conquered the skies of Europe, the Easy brand empire. With easyJet dominating the aviation sector, you might think Stelios would relax. He was a billionaire in his 30s. He had won. But Stelios didn't see himself as an airline executive. He saw himself as a brand architect. He realized that the Easy brand, the bright orange, the lowercase letters, the promise of no-frills value, was incredibly powerful. In 1998, he established Easy Group. The business model was entirely different from running an airline. Easy Group is essentially a holding company that owns the Easy brand and licenses it out. Stelios stepped back from the day-to-day running of easyJet to focus entirely on expanding the brand. He applied the same ruthless low-cost logic to everything. He launched Easy Internet Cafe, aiming to provide the cheapest web access in the world. He launched Easy Car, a rental service where the cars were plastered with advertising to keep costs down. There was Easy Hotel, where the rooms were essentially orange pods with no windows, but they cost next to nothing. It was a scattergun approach, and it was chaotic. Some of it worked brilliantly. Easy Hotel and Easy Gym became massive successes, perfectly translating the low-cost model to hospitality and fitness. But some of it failed spectacularly. Easy Cinema tried to apply airline dynamic pricing to movie tickets, but couldn't get the studios to cooperate. Easy Pizza tried to undercut Domino's, but struggled with logistics. Easy Cruise featured ships with minimalist orange cabins, but travelers wanted luxury on the high seas, not an easyJet flight that floated. But through the successes and failures, Stelios maintained an iron grip on the brand. He became notoriously litigious, fiercely protecting the Easy name. If a company tried to use the word easy with a lowercase e in an orange font, Easy Group's lawyers would descend upon them instantly. He understood that the brand was his ultimate asset. The battle with easyJet management. As easyJet matured into a massive, blue-chip corporation, the culture inevitably changed. It was no longer the scrappy underdog operating out of a tin shed. It was a corporate behemoth. And Stelios, who still owned a massive chunk of the shares alongside his family, found himself at odds with the monster he had created. He resigned from the easyJet board of directors in 2010, but he did not go quietly. For the next decade, he waged a relentless, public war against the airline's management. The core of the dispute was always the same: expansion versus dividends. The corporate executives wanted to buy massive fleets of new, expensive Airbus planes to conquer more market share. Stelios vehemently disagreed. He argued that the airline was suffering from fleet megalomania. He believed that buying too many planes would destroy shareholder value, create overcapacity, and ruin the profit margins. He wanted the company to fly fewer, fuller planes and return the profits to the shareholders as dividends. This battle reached a boiling point during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. With the entire global fleet grounded and the airline bleeding millions of pounds a day, the easyJet board still planned to proceed with a £4.5 billion order for over 100 new Airbus planes. Stelios was furious. He called the order a threat to the company's survival and launched a campaign to oust the CEO, the chairman, and the CFO. It was a bitter, highly personal fight. Ultimately, Stelios lost the shareholder vote to remove the board, but he made his point loudly. He is the ultimate activist shareholder, a founder who refuses to let corporate managers destroy the fundamental economics of the business he built. He eventually reduced his family's stake in the airline to below 16%, distancing himself further, but ensuring his voice could still shake the boardroom walls. Life today and philanthropy. Today, Sir Stelios Haji-Ioannou. He was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in 2006 for services to to entrepreneurship, lives primarily in Monaco. His net worth fluctuates in the billions, cementing his status as one of the most successful entrepreneurs in European history. But perhaps his most enduring legacy won't be painted orange. In recent years, Stelios has turned his relentless energy toward philanthropy. He created the Stelios Philanthropic Foundation, which funds a wide array of initiatives. He provides massive scholarships to his alma mater, the London School of Economics. He runs an annual award for disabled entrepreneurs in the UK, recognizing business brilliance in communities that are often overlooked. He funds environmental initiatives and supports local charities in Greece, Cyprus, and the UK. In 2017, he took the ultimate step. Stelios signed the Giving Pledge, the campaign founded by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. By signing it, he made a legally and morally binding commitment to give away more than half of his entire wealth to charitable causes during his lifetime or in his will. The man who spent his life ruthlessly accumulating capital by cutting costs out of the system has decided that the final act of his life will be giving it all away. Sir Stelios Haji-Ioannou is a paradox. He is a billionaire heir who championed the working-class traveler. He is a ruthless, litigious businessman who has pledged his fortune to charity. He is an innovator who realized that sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply stop giving people things they don't want to pay for. He fundamentally democratized European travel. He forced an entire continent to reevaluate how business is done. And he proved that with enough audacity, a great idea, and an absolutely obscene amount of orange paint, you can change the world.